Hello everyone, I'm Anthony Luskery. I am retired from Spark and I'm going to talk about spreadsheets without numbers today. The link for today's presentation, tiny.cc/SSSN, Spreadsheets Sans Numbers. Contact information for me is here available. Please feel free to email me with any questions you might have and visit my website of ztlearn.com. On my website, you'll find a link for a number of resources, including resources on spreadsheets. If you click on the resources section, then go to spreadsheets, you'll find a lot of information. I want to talk today about WoW spreadsheets, who, what, or where, or when, or what type of spreadsheets. These are also called interactive learning databases, ILDBs, informational databases, funnel sheets, sheets without numbers, FIB, fill in the blank, and their characteristics sheets. So this is one type of spreadsheet that you can use with a wide variety of subject areas and uses. It's basically a collection of data. We mainly use the filtering tools of the spreadsheet, also known as auto filtering. We can also use sorting or ordering, manual or conditioning formatting, or the VLOOKUP function. These will all help us to use the material that we have in our spreadsheet. This is what they basically look like. The characteristics of the spreadsheets I'm talking about today, the columns, the rows in column A are the items, things, people, characteristics. So this might be the planets of the universe, the characters in a novel, the chemical elements that you're studying, historical periods of time, countries, states, etc. So these are the things that we're talking about. Our first row, row 1, in each of the columns of that row, we have characteristics that we want to give for each of the items that we have listed. So we can have characteristic A, B, C, etc. So if these were planets of the universe, we might have things like distance from the sun, time that it takes for the planet to orbit the sun, the diameter of the planet, the type of material the planet is made out of, etc., etc. If these were animals in our items, we might have things like do they give live birth? Do they have wings? Do they have feathers? Do they have scales? Etc., etc. So again, we have the items and then the characteristics. They can be used for instructional purposes for class or group activities. They can be used for problem solving. They can also be used as a study guide, a style guide, and they can be used as a classification tool. They can be used to put in lab results and analyze them. It can also be used as an assessment tool for comprehension, analysis, classification, differentiation, and ordering. So they're a great tool for when you want to look at information, analyze it, work with it, etc. We're going to be using the filtering function quite a bit, and there is a function in spreadsheets. I'm going to be giving examples today using Google Sheets, but the same sort of things occur also with Excel and other spreadsheet programs. There is a function, as I said earlier, called filter, and it gives a filtered version of a source range, returning only rows or columns which meet the specified condition. It's much harder to use casually than the other tool we're going to use in a moment, so it's not commonly used. What we're going to use instead is the funnel icon. The funnel icon is a way to do filtering in a spreadsheet. It's much easier to do than using the filter function. It returns a filtered version of the source range, returning only rows or columns which meet the specified conditions. So it's the same type of information you get, but it's much easier to use. It's also quicker for most users to use this tool. This is the tool we'll be talking about today. It's known as auto filter in Excel and filter or funnel in Google Sheets. Google Spreadsheets also has a second option with a little drop down to the right of the filter icon called Create a New Filter View. That's beyond what we're going to be talking about today. So again, when you click on it, do not click on the little drop down next to it. Click on the funnel itself. There's another type of filtering available in spreadsheets called pivot tables. It's a completely different technique. Traditionally, it's thought of as a very difficult and complex thing to do in Excel, but in Google Spreadsheets, it's much, much easier. And if I have time, I would demonstrate it today. Let's talk a little bit about some of the ways we can analyze our data. The first thing I want to talk about is sorting and ordering versus filtering. Sorting is the process of arranging items systematically. There's two common yet distinct meanings of sorting. The first one is ordering. This is arranging items in a sequence ordered by some criteria, i.e. alphabetically, numerically, etc. The second type is categorizing. This is grouping items with similar properties. So for example, this might be when we're talking about animals, we could categorize them based on which family they belong to, which kingdom they belong to, or one characteristic that they all have. So we could have all the winged animals in one category, all the animals with fins in another category, etc. So sorting, when we talk about sorting, remember it could mean either ordering, putting things in a specific order, or categorizing, grouping things together. Filtering can both be used for categorization and ordering. And the nice thing about filtering is when we do filtering, it hides any items that do not meet the specific criteria that we want to look at. So if we were doing this with our animals, we could filter out all the animals who did not have wings, and that would be a way of using filtering. Filtering in spreadsheets, we need a couple criteria to get started. First of all, when we put our data in the spreadsheet, we want a top row. Usually it's the header row, but it doesn't have to be. And we prefer them to have column names. It makes its process a lot easier. So again, as I said earlier, this might be examples of distance from Earth, size of the planet, orbit time around the sun, etc. You want to avoid blank rows in your data. Putting blank rows in might seem like a great idea for separating things and making them easier to see, but it'll cause problems when you go to filter. You also want to avoid ambiguous data. So for example, if you're using true or false, make sure all the answers use the same format. If you're going to use a T or an F, that's fine, but make sure that you only use a T or an F. Or if you want to use the full word true or false, make sure you're using that. Do not mix the two together, because when you would do the filtering, you wouldn't be able to recognize the differences. So I suggest you use standardized data format, and one of the best ways to do this is with the data verification tool that's built into the spreadsheet. If you're not familiar with this, you can do a search for use of data verification in Google Sheets, and it'll tell you exactly how to do it. That limits what people can put into a field and makes sure that everything is consistent. So here's a typical layout of a Google spreadsheet with the information we use in one of our WoW spreadsheets. Again, we have our who, what, or where, our items on the left here in column A, in the rows 2 through 11, and across the top in row 1, columns B through H, we have our categories of data. And again, we're going to have labels on these, so it makes it much easier to do our filtering. So let's look at our next example. This is something I threw together. This has the information from Romeo and Juliet. So we have in column A a list of some of the main characters in Romeo and Juliet, and across the top in row 1, columns B through G, we have some of the characteristics of the various characters in the Romeo and Juliet. So we have a category, ask what family they're in, and notice we have the Montagues, the Capulets, and then we have other families. And we're only really interested in Montagues, Capulets, and others. So we're not that concerned with who the families are of some of these lesser characters. We also want to know whether the person is a parent in the play. So we have that information. Whether they're a friend of Romeo, a friend of Juliet, whether they live or die. That's one of the things that if you've read Romeo and Juliet, you know there's a number of characters that die, and there's also some characters that kill someone. So this would be an example of some information that we could put together. Now we could put this together in a couple different ways. We could pre-build this for our students to use, or we could ask the students to build the spreadsheet themselves, or what's very common when you're doing this with a book and you're doing characters in a book, Each time you get a new character, add a new row to the spreadsheet, put that information in there, and then list the characteristics. Anytime you encounter a new characteristic, you can add a new column and then go back and fill in that information for the characters that are already there. So let's say we had a category of, I don't know, where's a hat? If we had that category come up, we could add that column, where's a hat, and then go down and put yes and no's for all the people in here that might wear a hat in the play. So here's an example of using our filter function. Once we use the filter function, this is what we would see. So instead of seeing all these rows, 2 through 14, 13 rows of data, we now see that we have rows that are not contiguous, 2, 4, 6. So we have 3, 6, 8 rows instead of the 13 rows. And these are the people that are friends of Juliet. And notice in that column, everyone now says friend. Unlike our earlier data where we had foes and we had some blank areas, those are all hidden now when we do the filtering. So we're only seeing people that are friends of Juliet. We can drill deeper using our funnel feature and our filtering and take friends of Juliet and then view friends of Juliet who die. So here we have our friends of Juliet. When we look at who lives or dies, we'll see that this now shows only the people that die. So there's 3 main characters that are friends of Juliet who die: Romeo, Tybalt, and Paris. You might say that, well, Juliet dies and she's a friend of Juliet. I guess that would be the case also, but this is an example of other characters who die. So this is an example of a spreadsheet, and we're actually going to go out and work with it a little bit here. You can make a copy of that by clicking on the link that's here, and that'll make a copy of the spreadsheet. By the way, I've used a special ending on the address for each of these Google spreadsheets that allows the copy to be made so that you'll have edit capability of the spreadsheet when you go there. So if we click on this link, we'll see that we now have a field that says make a copy. We now click on the make a copy button, and it will make a copy of that spreadsheet. And here we go. This is a spreadsheet that has multiple tabs across the bottom. This first one just is a blank example. Here's our Romeo and Juliet. We'll click on the R and J tab at the bottom down here, and we'll see that we have our Romeo and Juliet spreadsheet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing here and then reshare a little bit differently to make it a little easier for you to see some of the text on the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the zoom feature of having a smaller shared area on the page, and this should make the text a little bit bigger and easier for you to see. I made it a little bit too small here, so I'm going to have to extend it out. So now you'll see that we have our key tool that we're going to use up here, our filtering tool. Our funnel is right there. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to highlight the top row here. I'm going to go up and click on the funnel for our filtering tool, and now you notice that each of these tools now has a little funnel next to it. Basically, each of these columns and each of the columns in the first row now has a little drop-down menu on it. So if we come to any of these, let's go for example to the family, click on that, we now see that we have 3 choices, and all 3 of them are chosen, so all the data is being shown. Let's take out the other, and let's take out the Montagues. This means that only the Caplets are selected. When we click OK, the OK button will do our filtering, and we will only see characters who are Capulets. And there we go, there's the Capulets. And again, I could go in and drill in deeper, but let's go back instead and click on the little funnel again. Notice how the funnel's changed shape here from the little drop down to an actual funnel to show that this column is being filtered. Now, just a warning, when you filter things, if you close the spreadsheet and come back and open it later, the filtering will still be on. So don't worry, you didn't lose any of your data. It's just that the filtering is turned on. These little indicators would show you that it's turned on. Notice we can also tell it's filtered because we have rows 1, 3, 4, 13, 14, and 18 being displayed here. So let's go back now and turn on all these different categories, and now we'll see that we have all of our data, and the little shape of the icon has changed up here. So let's take a look at the parents now. We're going to go ahead and say that we want to see everyone who's a parent, so we're going to uncheck no. We're going to say OK, and we're going to see the 4 main parents in this: Lord and Lady Montague, Lord and Lady Capulet. Now, here's something interesting we're going to do. We're going to see who is a friend of Romeo, and we're going to come down here, take off the foes, and we'll see the friends. And it's interesting, we see that there's actually not just his parents, of course, but also Lord Capulet likes Romeo. Juliet's mother did not like Romeo, but her father did. So we can come back up here and we could go through and turn all these back on again. So we have everything, or we can simply select the top row again, click the filter button and turn off the filtering. So that's one way that we can go back to our normal just by highlighting that and then going back up to the funnel again, and that turns it back off again. So that's the basic filtering that we'll be using throughout this presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share and restart it here again. Let's return back to our example here. So we have some other examples, and we'll go through those a little bit more in a few moments. The other way that we can interact with the spreadsheet to make sure that information is seen is by using visual enhancement. We can change the text color. We can change the background color of any of the cells. We can also create alternating rows of colors to help us be able to visualize data across the screen. We can also resize columns. And then another technique is freezing rows and columns. And in my other talk today on 12 things you can do with Google Sheets, I'm going to talk about freezing rows and columns. So make sure if you don't get a chance to attend that today, you go back and watch the recording. And I'll be talking about doing all these things in my other talk. One thing you don't want to do is don't use extra rows or columns for visual enhancement. Don't separate data with blank rows or blank columns. That just gives you problems later when you try and do calculations, sorting, filtering, anything else. So avoid blank rows to try and do your visual enhancement. In addition to this manual formatting, we can do some automatic formatting called conditional formatting. Conditional formatting is very similar to manual formatting, but it uses rules that you create. And when you create these rules, the colors are applied automatically to both data that you already have, plus data that you might add or data that might change. So you can do the same thing again. You can use a single color to change the color background of the cell, or you can change the text color, or even the style. You can make things bold, italicized, etc. based on certain criteria. You can also use conditional formatting to create a color scale, sometimes called a heat scale, where we might have things that are the highest number be a bright red, and things that are the lowest number be a cool blue color. And you can set up custom color scales for yourself, and these can be applied to a range of data and give you interesting visual enhancements. These are some examples of using spreadsheet filtering and learning. We already talked about different characters and their characteristics. We could also do the same thing with places and characteristics, science items, animals, vegetables, minerals, etc., planets, atoms, etc., anything like that. You can also do an interactive type spreadsheet, and I have one here called pH, which we'll give a demonstration of a little later. You can also use it to identify things like trees or bacteria or fungi, etc. So it can be used as a dichotomous key where you keep drilling down by using the filtering function. It's very similar to what you might do with a chart that you would go down through the line and figure out which tree you have based on characteristics of the leaf. You can also use it for a timeline, a sequence of events. I have some information here if you want to put together databases for any books. I have something here called book databases. They're very similar to the International Movie Database many of you may be familiar with for details and information about movies. But these are sites that you can find character lists very easily, so you don't have to create the character list yourself. You might need to do a little bit of digging, but you want to do like I did and try to come back from memory with the characters of Romeo and Juliet from high school that was quite a few years away. Here's also some more list of characters available on Wikipedia, a list of fictional characters at work, etc. So you can find this information helpful when you're creating your list. I originally did this presentation for language arts teachers, so that's why there's so much focus on characters in books and literature. But it's also very good for all the subject areas. You can use pivot tables. As I said earlier, they're sort of like filtering on spreadsheets. They have filtering capability, ordering and sorting capability built in. They also can count and tally information. So in addition to having it displayed, you can have counts, averages, percentages, etc. of the data. And we'll go through a quick example of this when we're done talking about the filtering. The pivot tables are great for really big lists that extend beyond one page. An example we're going to use for that is a spreadsheet called car owners. And again, when you click on this, it'll take you out to that. And I'll be coming back and going through each of those. There's also some additional resources here in the presentation. One of them is the idea that when you're using spreadsheets for student data, a great way to get the data inputted is by not using a spreadsheet at all, but it's using a Google form. When you do this, the students actually interact with the form, so they might answer a very simple question. That feeds the data into a Google Sheet where you can then do the analysis on it. And you can do anything with the data that comes into the form spreadsheet that you could do with any general spreadsheet. And I have an example here called How Old is Your Class? And let's just stop here for a moment and go out and take a look at that. When you click on this link, it will copy the spreadsheet values for that. And you might say, well, I want to copy the form. No, you actually want to copy the spreadsheet that accompanies the form, and then that way you can still open the form up and edit it, but it'll have some extra tools which I built into this. So here's the example of the spreadsheet, and here's our form responses. To go in and edit the form itself or to look at the form, we're going to go up here under Tools, and we're going to go to where it says Manage the Form and click Edit Form, and that'll open up the form just like we made a copy of it. And you'll see what I did in this. I don't want to have the students give their exact birth date in a way that anyone could reuse that data in a bad way. So what I have them do is I have them choose a fake name from literature, movies, cartoons, etc. Just a wide variety of weird fake names. They pick a fake name, and once they pick one name, I'm using something called choice limiter, so they can only use that once. And once they do that, they will go to the end. And what they actually see when they go in is they will see something that looks like this. They will choose a fake name from the list by using the drop-down menu. Let's just pick one here. We'll pick Dumbo, one of my favorites. They then put in their birthday. And I want them to put in their exact birthday without worrying about it being used for something else. So I'm going to put in this student's birthday. They're born October 13th, 2010. I'm sorry, 2009. We'll fix that. 2009. There we go. And we'll submit that. And once we do that, the data goes directly into the spreadsheet. And if we go back and look at our results spreadsheet again, you'll see that now Dumbo's in here. It puts the time that it was put in. We don't really care about that, but all the results that come in through a Google form are always time-stamped in the spreadsheet. Here's the information we're interested in, the name and then the age. Now we're just using the name so that everyone has a unique name and we won't worry about that. I've added a couple more sheets here, and these are already set up so that when you put the information in, every time you add someone new, it will automatically update it. So here's Dumbo that just came in with their birthday. This is the way it's displayed as a serial date. That's all the way in the background the Google Sheets actually displays spreadsheet dates. But their year is 12.81, and this will update every day. So if you look at this in a couple of weeks, it'll change. The age in months, age in days, age in hours, age in minutes. And all I'm doing here is using multiplication. So if you look behind any of these, you'll simply see that there's a formula up here that multiplies it by, in this case, divides it by 365. And here we have one where we're doing multiplying it by 12. And then so forth and so forth. So we're just calculating. You don't need to worry about that. That's already set up. So once you do this, this would be a great activity to do one of the first days when your students are starting out. Have them fill out this form, and you'll get things like who's the youngest in the class. Of course, it doesn't display the name, so you don't have to worry about giving away information on your students, and the oldest and the range in years. The students will know what their birth date is, so they'll be able to tell real quick if they're the youngest or oldest because they'll know what the fake name they chose. But other people will not. So we have the range. There's a 37-month range of the students in this class that works out to 1,130 days range of different times. We have the average age is 11.45, the median age 11.69, mode age, maximum age, and minimum age. Now notice we did all this calculations by having this all set up ahead of time, and they simply go into the form and put in their response into the form by sending them the link so that they get this information. So if you've not used forms before, you can find a lot more information on them, but it's a great way to feed information into a spreadsheet and not have to worry about anyone messing up the spreadsheet or not understanding how to put the information in the spreadsheet by using a form. So let's go back to our presentation here, and we'll get a little bit further along here. I also have information on generating fake data. This is a great way to generate data. Random generators, random test information, and you can go in here and generate a list of statistics with all fake information, then allow your students to play around with it. And you can create thousands of things so that they'll have a lot of data to analyze when they go through this list. Sorry about the phone ringing there. Of course, it was spam. Also, I have some information here if you want to generate some data just by using some of the functions built into spreadsheets. You can generate a random number between 2 points, etc., etc. So these are all links. When you click on these icons, it'll actually bring you out to that site to get that information. So again, you're going to want to use this spreadsheet by going, this presentation by going to tiny.cc/ss I'm sorry, that's the one we're going to do later. That's another spreadsheet. These are all information, more resources for you. I'll give you the link to this presentation in a few seconds. Eric Kurtz has a number of good information on using spreadsheet activities for all subjects. I would definitely take a look at this link. He adds to this every month, so there's more information out there. So this is a great resource. And then if you're interested in something completely different, I have a talk on ways to improve your cooking, and I'd be happy to do this for your home economics, family living, whatever class you might have in your school. If they'd like a video presentation on Zoom, I'd be happy to do that. So some other presentations of mine are on the slideshow here. But what you need to remember is to get to this slideshow, it's tiny.cc/ssn, SSN, 3 S's and 1 N. So let's take a look at some of our spreadsheets and work through a couple things here. So if we get on the bottom of our our spreadsheet that we had earlier, you can see that we have our tab called Animals, and this lets us do the similar type of thing. So we can go in and highlight the first row, use our little funnel, and we can choose any of these categories. So if we want to see all the warm-blooded animals, we will see all those. And you'll see that that means that it's in one of these two groups. It's either birds or mammals. These are some of the animals that the kids provided, and we see them here, and we can tell which group they fall into. We could drill down even more by going in and choosing something else here. Let's choose wings, for example. So we'll say we want the animals that have wings, and the animals that have wings in this case are birds. They have wings and they have warm blood. This is another example, the pH one. You would use pH paper, and the students can actually measure the pH and get the paper change and see the color change. They can take that along the edge here and go across there, and they can then put an X in whatever field. So when they have a different chemical, they would come in here, put in the name of the chemical, ABC, and then they would see what the pH is. They come along here and say, oh, it looks like it's a 10. They would type in 10 down here, and they put an X under the 10 category, and that would show where it was at. And again, the way you would use this particular spreadsheet is you would come up here under the top, you click on the numbers here, then use the filtering function, and we can find all of the chemicals that are a 9 by going in here and removing the blanks and leaving the X's there. So these are all chemicals that have a pH of 9. Surprise, surprise, olive oil has a pH of 9. I don't suggest you eat or drink the other items that are on this list. And again, you can restore it back by going up there, or you can simply go up here and take this and remove the funneling, the filtering, and it'll show everything. Here's a different one on genres of literature. Here's a dichotomous key for identifying vehicles based on the number of wheels or the type of fuel they use. And again, you can play around with anything you want. Let's take a look at another example. This is, I think this is Eric's example, the animal database. Again, very similar to what I had before. Choose the top, turn on the filtering function, and then you can come in here and find all the animals that lay eggs. And there we go. And notice that there's a variety of different animals. Some have wings, some have fins, some have hair, some have feathers, etc. So you can drill down even further. So if we go to animals that have that lay eggs and don't have feathers. We'll see that we have the alligators, bees, turtles, tarantulas, and of course the platypus. So we even have some warm-blooded animals in here. So this is Eric's chart on animals, and again, you can do the same thing. Let's take a look at something a little more complex. This is a spreadsheet of car owners, and let's go to the data tab down here. This is 1,000 things in the, so it'd be very hard to analyze this by just glancing at it. And I created this by using one of the random data generators. So it has fake first and last names, a city, a state, a gender, an age, and a car make, and a car model. And this is all generated automatically from one of those random data generators. But let's say we wanted to find out what kind of car makes were included in this list. We could go down the list and say, okay, there's a Buick, there's a Chevy, there's a Hummer, Volkswagen. Here's another Pontiac, 2 Pontiacs. So I got another Chevy here. So what we can do instead is we can use something called a pivot table. The first thing we want to do is select the whole range of data, and the easiest way to do that is choose the cell in the upper left-hand corner. For those of you that are Harry Potter fans, this is the cell that shall not have a name. When we click on that, you'll notice it selects all the data. We can also use the Control A to select all the data if we want to do it that way, but I like to click on the cell that shall have no name. Right up here, once we do that, we go up to Insert, and we choose the thing that says Insert a Pivot Table. When we insert the pivot table, it's going to give us a choice of a new sheet or an existing sheet. The vast majority of the time, you're going to want to choose new sheet. We'll do that. It's going to create a new pivot table, and it's going to name the sheet as default pivot table number 7 because I've already created some other pivot tables. This looks very complicated, but it actually is fairly easy. The first thing we're going to say is, what do we want in the rows? Now the rows will be all the rows in column A. So this is going to be where we have our list of items. And in this case, I want to have the list of all the different car manufacturers. So I'm going to say add, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say car make, and that will give me a list of all the car manufacturers and the different makes. So we have everything from Acura to Volvo. So we have a number of names. I'm just going to use the little quick tool here on the side, highlight all the car names, and you'll notice down here if we go to our account, we'll see that we have a count of 59. If you're not familiar with this little quick tool down at the bottom, come to my other presentation and find out about that. But this is a great way to find out just by highlighting it. So we have 59 different types of cars. Now what I could do is I could actually go in and do more information on this. I could say I want to add a column here with different information, so I could find first names or last names or cities. Let's find the state in which these cars are in, and that would list a separate column for all 50 states here. I would then add the value. I'd choose car make because that's what we're doing, and it would tell me how many of each make of car are in each state. So for example, if I go in the BMW category and I go over to California, I see two BMWs, 3 in Florida, etc., etc. So we can do any of those. I'm going to go ahead and take these off, and we're going to do something else here. Let's go in, just find out how many of each car there are. So we just simply come down to values, and I'm going to say car make again, and I'm going to choose right here where it says summarize by, I'm going to say count A. That'll count. Now the difference between count A and count A counts words, count without the A counts numbers. So I want count A, and I can do it as either the count itself, a percentage of the grand total, etc. I'm just going to do the count itself, and you'll see that we have our different cars here. Now I can sort it up here by the count, so that'll show me the count sorted in order, and Ford is the most in there. There's 90 of those 1,000 cars are Fords. Now, you might say, well, why can't we switch this count around? We could, but it's not very easy to do. So in this case, we can actually take our pivot table data, copy it. I'm just going to copy the whole thing here. Now I'm going to come over here where the pivot table is not at. I'm going to actually close the pivot table tool to even prove it to you. I'm going to come over here in just some blank area. I'm going to do a paste, but I'm going to do a paste special. That will paste the values. So that means it won't be changing with the spreadsheet. It's pasted values in there. I can now come in and simply highlight these cars that are in the list, and I could come in here and right click on this, go to view more actions, sort range, and now I could choose to sort them in reverse order based on column G, which is the count, and voila, there's my cars counted by the number of each model. So we can take our data that we get from our pivot table and we can do other things with it. But you just need to use that paste as data values only, and then you can do anything else you want with it. And I have a lot of different pivot tables here. I did one just right here based on each of the cars and then the gender of the owner. And I have the count of cars. So there's 11 Acuras owned by females, which means that 65% of the total Acuras are owned by females. And if you look at these are random, but some of them are really skewed. Like there was a lot more Bentleys owned by females than there were by males, etc., etc. So this is something that you could do to analyze any type of data. And again, all you need is a spreadsheet full of data, and then you can analyze it using a pivot table. You can analyze it by using the filter function. And just to prove that the filter function still works with this large amount of data, let's just try putting our funnel on here. And let's come in here and say we want to only see the cars that are in Ohio. So I could go through and click on each of these, but I'm going to say clear, and then I'm going to type in Ohio in the search box. When Ohio comes up, I'll put a check box on it, say OK, and now I'm going to see all the cars from Ohio. And again, I can narrow this down. I can say I want to see all the cars in Ohio owned by females. And I also can say that I want to see all the cars in Ohio that are based on above a certain age. So I could even do that by coming in here and filtering by condition. And I can say that it's greater than 50. So this will only show the female owners over 50 years of age in Ohio. And there we go. We see we got 72 through 70 through 83. So we've done 3 categories. We've narrowed it down by state, by gender, and then by age. So we can do any of these through the filtering function. Again, if you didn't notice that, what I used here, instead of going down and changing the values, I used filter by condition. And I'm going to just actually take this one off, and I'm going to cancel that one so that we get rid of that. I'm going to say, I don't want to do this. The easiest way, again, is just to go up here, click on that, turn off the filtering. It flushes everything out. Everything goes back to normal. So let's do that again. We'll highlight that, select it, and then we get our little drop down. So we can come in here and look at all the different cars. We can choose all the cars that started with the letter A. So there's a lot of different ways we can use either the filter by condition or the filter by value, which is what we typically use. Now the filter by color is a really neat tool. If you've filled certain colors in on your spreadsheet, you can filter by color. And just want to talk about color real quick here. I remember I said earlier you can manually highlight things and then change the background color to a different color. We'll undo that real quick here. Or we could come through and choose our whole spreadsheet. Let's get rid of these extra columns over here real quick, just so they're not in the way. And we'll just delete those. So let's turn off our filtering. Let's select our whole thing, and then we'll come over to our color. And this time, instead of choosing a specific color, I'm going to choose alternating colors. And that will let me create an alternate color chart like this, using any of these colors. And the nice thing is, if we come in here and insert a line later on, it will automatically, oops, let me try that again. I pasted by mistake. Let me undo what I just did. If we insert a line here, a row, notice it automatically adjusts the colors for the new information we want to insert. So there's a lot of different things you can do. I mentioned earlier, let's go ahead and undo all this. I mentioned earlier conditional formatting. I'll be talking more about that in my other presentation, but just to give you a quick idea, if we select everything here and then we go to data and we go to conditional format, go to format and then conditional format, we can choose different things here for format. So I could say that if the cell, if the text contains Ford, I want it to be bright yellow, and I want the words to be in red, and I want them to be bold. And boom, there we go. And it shows all the Fords. And notice here's a Ford in here because we didn't say exactly Ford. We just said contains Ford. So there was a name with Ford in it. Here's another name with Ford in it. But most of these are the cars. So again, thank you very much for attending today. And I will go back to the very beginning and show you the link to get into today's spreadsheet, tiny.cc/SSSN. And please feel free to contact me if you have questions. I'm happy to try and answer questions via email. Hope you enjoy the Spark conference.